Now we're going to start a new chapter, and the whole chapter is for hypothesis testing. That's a very important topic in statistics. Hypothesis. And hypothesis means you assume something is true or you assume something is not true, right? Something like that. So, okay, hypothesis testing. And we're going to do the first one is some basic information or the basics of hypothesis testing. So what are the basics of it? They are all the glossary or the terms that we're going to use. So first of all, hypothesis. Hypothesis is a claim. That's a claim or a statement about about a property of a population, about a property of a population. This is very important. So we always want to assume that something is going on with the population. Either someone claimed that the mean of the population is 3 or less than 5 or things like that. So that's a claim or a statement about a property of a population. And the hypothesis testing will be, we want to test whether this is true or not. Okay, so we want to test it. That's a procedure that we're going to perform the test. All right, now we usually come up with like a pair of them. One is called either HO or H0, and this is called null hypothesis. Null hypothesis. And for the null hypothesis, that always include equal. Okay? And then the other one is sometimes we use HA, sometimes we use H1. Okay, so but this one is the same thing. Even you use that HO or H0, the notation looks the same. But the other one is either HA, H1. Sometimes you might see H alpha. So all of this doesn't matter which notation you're using as long as this is not HO. So we call this alternative hypothesis. Alternative hypothesis. Okay, so that is very different than the hypothesis. Different than the null hypothesis. The null hypothesis has to be equal, and this one we might have a greater than, okay, which means like the mean is greater than something, or less than, okay, like a proportion is less than some percentage, or not equal to. So there are like all different type of alternative hypothesis. Okay, so that's the general idea about this. Once you see the question, if you read the question, usually they're going to say that, the newspaper claim or the researcher claims, or it's a common belief that all those things, that's about the claim. So the claim could be either here or could be here. It depends on whether there is any equal thing or equality in that statement or not. Okay, so then next I'm going to introduce the steps in hypothesis testing. It's really, really hard to do this chapter without the actual example. So I hope that after you finish this, then you go to my next video right away. Otherwise, it's hard to understand that. Okay, so there are 8 steps to do a hypothesis testing. The first one, find the claim or identify the claim. What is the claim? And right now, after you find the claim and you're going to translate, I'm going to write, or I say write the claim in math notation, okay, or in math expression. So like translate the claim from English to math. And number 3, HO and HA. Okay, so once you know this, then you can write HO and HA. So that's always the first 3 steps, or we can say the first one step or first part. All right, now the next step is, what is the significance level? Significance level. and usually we use alpha to show it. All right, now do you remember what is y1 minus alpha? In our chapter 7 or in our previous chapters, we call this as confidence level, right? Is that right? So if your alpha is a 0.05, then your significance level is 0.05, and a 1 minus alpha, that will be 95% or 95.95, and that's your confidence level. So I'm just leave that here, okay? We don't worry about that right now. And then so you identify your significance level. Most of the case is given in the question. If not, or by default, we use 0.05. Okay, 0.5 or given. Let me just put it this way. Okay, so that's the next step. And step 5, you're going to identify the test statistic or statistics. So that would be, what are you going to do? You're going to use Z, you're going to use a T, or you're going to use chi-square. Okay, so you have to determine which distribution you want to use and how to calculate the test statistic. And I will give you the formula later, so don't worry about that. And then you identify the test statistic. And after this, that's the step 5. Step 6, okay, find p-value. All right, and then 7, compare p-value with alpha. Okay, if your p-value is less than or equal to alpha, you reject HO. And if you have a very tiny, if you have a great alpha, then you fail to reject HO. So if you have a very small p-value, you reject HO. All right, and then the that's the step 7, and then step 8. Step 8, you're gonna interpret, or you're gonna I said interpret, or you're gonna restate your decision. Okay. It is hard to understand just without actual questions. So 1 to 8. Now here, for step 6 and 7, there's another way to do it. Okay, let me show you the other way for step alternative. Step 6 and 7. Okay, this alternative means just another way. Okay, and it has nothing to do with the alternative hypothesis. The other way is you're going to get the critical value okay, you get the critical value, and you're going to get the critical value and identify rejection region. Okay, compare critical value and or compare this with the test statistic you just calculated, statistic. Okay, and then to either reject HO or fail to reject HO. Okay, so I leave this right now. Later in the next video, I'm going to use the actual example to show that. All right, now before that, I have another thing I want to tell you. For HA, HO is always something equal to a value, right? And for HA, could be either something is greater than something, or less than something, or not equal to something, right? Because I said there are like 3 different possible HA, the alternative hypothesis. Now, if it shows something greater than that, and then when you graph it, you are going to graph look like this, because it's a greater, so you're going to shade the right tail. This is called a right tail test. And this one less than, then that'll be very similar to that, and so it's going to be, this is the left tail test. And both of these two, we call this as one tail, okay? And not equal to, that means it could be either too great or too small. So I'm going to have something look like this. So that'll be two-tailed test. Okay, so I might have to put ED, ED, and ED here. All right, so you might have a right-tailed test, a left-tailed test, or two-tailed test. It really depends on what's the symbol or what's the thing you would put here in the HA. I think you are confused already, and well, I still have to go to a couple of slices, and there is one page. If you look at the video, let me show you. Okay. All right, and there's a flow chart. Okay, so you're gonna, I think the flow chart looks like this. Here's a start, and then go down here. You're gonna say, does the original claim, contain equal? It's a question. Okay. Then if no, if yes, that's only 2 possible answers, right? And then go to the next. Do you reject HO? Then could be yes, could be no, and also the same thing here, reject HO, that was the question, and then either yes or no. And then down there, I think there's, if you look at the handouts, there's like all fixed way. There must be this way you interpret your result to be very accurate. So it's very easy when you want to do the step 8. You want to restate your conclusion, and then you probably want to take out this and then just pretty much copy the thing, and then until the last step, just restate the claim. Okay. And there's another concept which I don't need to, well, I'm not going to test you, but I just want to let you know that the type 1 and the type 2 error. So alpha, the significance level we use, is the probability making a type 1 error. What is that? What is type 1 error? Type 1 error is false positive. That's a mistake you made, right? That's the error. How do you remember that? You just remember there's a boy whose pregnancy test shows positive. So a boy is pregnant. Well, that is a false positive. So that's a type 1 error we're going to make. And the other one, we might have a false positive and we might have false negative, right? If a lady who is pregnant but the test shows that she is not, then that's a false negative. So this is type 1, and the other one false negative. We call this as type 2. And the type 1 error, the probability you're going to make a type 1 error is alpha, and the other one, the probability that you're going to make the type 2 error, which is what is the chance that you're going to have a false negative? We use beta. And in this section or in this book, that we don't need to go to that detail because we're not going to mention that. And the other way, type 1 error is the mistake because you fail to, it's a mistake that the null hypothesis is true, but you reject it. Okay, so that is true and you reject it. So that's the probability that you reject HO when HO is true. Okay, and the type 2 error is you fail to reject HO when HO is false. That is the probability that you fail to reject HO when HO is false. It's just some concepts that I want you to have some general idea about it, and pretty much that is our this session. It's the basic concepts about the hypothesis testing. Okay.